Let's talk about the issue of taking the knee that has set social media ablaze, with many South Africans expressing their views. This comes after Quinton de Kock refused to comply with Cricket South Africa's instruction for the Proteas to take a stand against racism. Let's discuss this further with Dr. Saths Cooper, an anti-apartheid activist and former president of a Psychological Society of South Africa. Dr. Cooper, thank you so much for your time now. There are various views that have come up regarding the stance that Quinton de Kock has taken, but we know that it's not the first time. Before this, the players had an option of either raising their arm with their fist up in the air to take the knee, or to show another form of taking a stand against racism. What does this actually say and mean, the developments that we are seeing now?
I think this is one of the tragic sequelae of us not dealing with the deep divides, with the deep racism that we have come from. And, this particular player is quite young. He's, I think, in his late 20s. And for him to feel this way tells us that all is not well. Having played at the international level, seeing players all over the world, and actually seeing the majority of players in the world are black, not white. And there is a call for racial and other forms of social justice. And it says something when one of us, growing up amongst us and playing the kinds of roles he has played, harbors this which actually flies in the face of our Constitution even. And because the preamble of our Constitution actually says that we recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom, etc., and that this country belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. So whoever is trying to suggest he has a right to his own views, he should be exercising that right outside of being our representative. And it's terrible that the captain has to make the kinds of statements he's been forced to make when the culprit is lying behind, "I am unavailable." So I think it's about time that we continued outing racists representing us. They shouldn't. And this kind of thing is something that is also ironic, because we've just had the spectacle of the Cricket South Africa having hearings into racism, and it's blatant that there's been racism. So for anybody under 40 to harbor this kind of sentiment, you wonder how they get socialized, and the absolute intractable nature of their positions when the world has changed.
I must ask Dr. Cooper, what de Kock said is that he is withdrawing from the T20 for personal reasons. He hasn't blatantly said that he is against the Black Lives Matter movement or against anti-racist campaigns, etc. What do you make of that, the fact that he actually hasn't come out and he hasn't said that he is not an anti-apartheid activist, or he doesn't support the cause of those who stand for racism? And I ask this because there are some quarters who say there are all lives that matter, and that could be the stance that he is maybe taking. What do you say to that type of reasoning?
That latter reasoning I've heard since the murder of George Floyd in May last year by the police in Minneapolis. Of course, all lives matter. But when the subject of dehumanization, indignity, blatant attack are persons who are, and whoever says all lives matter should cast their flag into the wind on that issue. It is, in this warped mentality that we have in this country, it seems as if any affirmation of the majority of our people becomes an insult to a small racist minority. I think we need to stop making excuses for racism and its obverse sexism, and it should not be that anybody who has those kinds of views should represent us, because our country is out there as this so-called rainbow nation, without regard for belief, without regard for race and other kinds of narrow boxes that we would wish to push those. This othering and the way that language gets used against the majority who are suffering in our society as we speak is a total injustice, and we should not have anybody, however they may be skilled, to be in our teams.
Cricket South Africa has now, for this T20 World Cup, taken the decision to make it compulsory for players to kneel. Have they overstepped?
No, I think that's about time. I mean, I think they came in, the hearings have been a litany of racist incidents. I mean, I listened to that coach who was trying to justify putting little black kids in a basement, giving them mattresses and say, well, they had a toilet and they had TV, as if that's where they should be consigned. No, no, no. Sport should not have politics, race, sexism in it. It should be there for all our children. And it's a pity that somebody as young as this harbors sentiment which says that our experiment in non-racialism is failing us.
Dr. Saths Cooper, thank you very much for your time and your insight in this regard. That's Dr. Saths Cooper, an anti-apartheid activist as well as former president of Past Psychological Society.